We would like to talk about our recent paper, Anisotropic MagnetoMemristance. The paper focuses on magnetic nanoscale devices in which there are both anisotropic magnetoresistance effects and magnetodynamics induced by currents. For instance, common permalloy, which can be lithographically printed with modern techniques in a shape similar to the annulus shown here, and which we can assume to be of the size of a few tenths of nanometers. The dynamics of the magnetization in these materials can be studied via the Landaulicious scalability equation shown here. The standard equation contains two terms, one shown here which represents a reaction to an external magnetic field, and one which is a damping term which is shown here. We also consider the effect of the currents on the magnetization via the so-called Zhang-Li model, commonly used in the study of spin torque. Thus, if an electric current is present in the material, the magnetization reacts to its presence with a torque effect. In our model and numerical analysis, we do assume that the current follows the direction of the annulus and that it is proportional to a certain scalar current J. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of our analysis. We recall Ohm's law, which says that the voltage in the material is proportional to the current via the resistance. However, inside an isotropic material, Ohm's law is the statement that the electric field is proportional to the current vector via a resistivity parameter typical of the material. In the case in which there is also an anisotropic magnetoresistance effect, there is an extra contribution to the electric field if both the magnetization and the current are present and are not orthogonal. In permalloy, the effect changes the resistance by 3 or 4%. The voltage of the macroscopic Ohm's law can be recovered by integrating along a path, here assumed to be at the center of the annulus, the electric field. The resistance is then just the applied voltage divided by the effective current in the material. In the paper, we show that on top of the material's typical resistivity, there is a contribution purely due to the magnetization parallel to the annulus direction. However, that would be only a static contribution to the resistance. In addition, we also show that in order for the resistance to be dynamic, one has to have magnetization configurations that are topological in nature, meaning that they have to wrap around the annulus in a nontrivial manner. Let us put all these elements together. We assume that we have a material with anisotropic magnetoresistance effect, and a Zhang-Li coupling between the magnetization and the current. Then, if the magnetization state is topologically nontrivial, not only we have an effective contribution to the resistance, but such resistance is also dynamic. This means that we have in the material a current-induced memristive effect, which can be seen as a hysteresis in the current voltage diagram if we apply an AC voltage. For the case of permalloy, micromagnetic simulations show that for currents of a few microamperes, the memristive effects should be visible at the nanovolt scale. In particular, we also show that the effect should be dependent on the radius and the thickness of the annulus, both analytically and via micromagnetic simulations. Such effect can also be used as a signature of particular events in the material. For instance, while the wiggling of a domain wall to the AC current contributes to the memristive effects, the annihilation of two domain walls will lead to the disappearance of a dynamical resistance. For instance, here we show how two domain walls disappear because of their collision. In conclusion, this is why we call such effect anisotropic magnetomemristance, as the combination of AMR and the current-induced dynamical magnetization lead to the memristive effect.